Hey everyone, and welcome. You've all seen it in the movies, right? The poker pro spots an opponent eating a cookie a certain way and instantly knows their hand. It's awesome for TV, but is it real? Well, today we're going to crack the code on poker tells, and not as some Hollywood trick, but as a really fascinating window into how people tick. Okay, let's get into it. And yeah, this quote from Upswing Poker just hits the nail on the head. See, the real world of tells isn't about some single magical giveaway. The truth is, it's way more subtle, and honestly, a whole lot more interesting. So we're going to separate the Hollywood fantasy from what actually works at the table. All right, so before we even think about specific tells, we have to lay down the foundation. There is one rule, one concept that absolutely unlocks everything else. Seriously, if you only take one thing away from all this, make it this next part. So I'll just ask you straight up, what do you think it is? What's the number one most important thing you need to know to read somebody, not just in poker, but anywhere? It's not about finding some liar's twitch or anything like that. It's much more fundamental. And here it is. The whole game is not about spotting one specific action. It's about spotting a deviation from a pattern. You see, a tell is totally meaningless on its own. It only becomes useful information when it's a break from how someone normally acts. Without that pattern, you've got nothing. So what is that pattern? Well, we call it a baseline. Think about it like this. You know how your best friend normally sounds on the phone, right? So the second their voice changes even a little bit, you can tell something is off. That's a baseline. It's the same thing at the poker table. You have to first watch how a player acts when they're just chilling, not in a big, stressful hand, to figure out what's normal for them. This really breaks it down perfectly. Your first job is to just tune into the noise. You know, a player's normal, consistent, everyday actions. It's only after you've done that that you can actually pick out the signal, that one thing they do that's suddenly different, that's out of character. And that is where the real information is hiding. Okay, now that we've got our number one rule down, let's start building out our toolkit. You'll find there are some really common psychological patterns that pop up over and over again, and they all tend to follow this one simple, kind of counterintuitive principle. And this is a total classic in the poker world. A lot of the time, players will act the exact opposite of how strong their hand is. Now, why would they do that? Well, because it takes real mental energy to hide the truth. If someone is holding a monster hand, they have to consciously act weak or uncertain to try and get you to call. And on the flip side, a bluffer is burning calories trying to look as confident and scary as possible to get you to fold. And all that effort, it almost always leads to a little bit of overacting. So let's look at some strong is weak tells. These are things people do when they have a great hand but want to look weak to get your money. You might see them kind of hesitate or do a little stop and start motion when they bet. Or they'll sigh, look confused, and then slide out a huge bet. But a really big one is that quick little glance at their own chips the second the flop comes out. Their brain is already firing, thinking, okay, how much can I get out of this guy? And of course, the opposite is totally true. When someone is weak or bluffing, they often go way over the top to project strength. That intense stare down after a big bet, it's pure intimidation. Pushing chips around in a menacing way, that's just theater designed to make you nervous. Oh, and a super quick call can be a massive giveaway. It often means they didn't even for a second consider raising, which is something someone with a really strong hand would almost always think about. All right, so we've got our baseline rule. We've got our strong as weak toolkit, but now we have to add one more critical layer to all of this: context. Because without context, you can misread the whole situation. Okay, here is a perfect example. A player at the table takes another peek at their cards in the middle of a hand. What does that tell you? Is that a sign of strength, like they're so relaxed they don't mind looking? Or is it weakness, showing they're unfocused? Well, the answer is, it completely depends on when they do it. And check this out. If a player is just waiting for their turn to act and they recheck their cards, that's often a sign of weakness. They probably don't have a premium hand, so they're not fully focused. But if a player makes a huge bet and then casually glances back at their cards, that often signals incredible strength. See, a bluffer would never want to risk looking uncertain at that moment. The person with the good hand is relaxed enough that they just don't care. So you see, the exact same action can have two completely opposite meanings. It proves that there's no simple if they do this, it means that formula. The timing, the bet size, the situation, that's the context, and context is everything. So you might be thinking, this is cool, but why does it matter if I'm not planning on playing poker for a living? Well, here's the best part. These skills of observation, they are unbelievably valuable in pretty much every single part of your life. Let's make that connection right now. You know, everything we've talked about so far, establishing a baseline for people, noticing when they deviate from it, understanding the context of the situation, these aren't just poker tools. They're tools for better communication and understanding at your job, in your relationships, everywhere. It's really just about being more present and observant. And you can see just how directly this stuff translates. Those little soothing gestures, like rubbing your arms, that's not just a sign of a bluff. It's a super common sign of stress before a big presentation. That weak is strong overacting we talked about, I mean, we all know someone who acts tough or abrasive to hide that they're feeling insecure. A sudden lean-in during a conversation, or a quick change in how someone is talking. These are all signals you can learn to pick up on in your daily life. So if we had to boil this entire thing down to one single takeaway, it's this. Stop looking for the one gotcha moment. Forget about finding that one magic tell that reveals everything. Instead, just start training yourself to be a better observer of patterns and pay really close attention when those patterns suddenly change. And that's really the question I want to leave you with. In your next meeting, your next conversation with a friend, or even when you're just people watching at a coffee shop, what subtle little deviations from the baseline have you been completely missing this whole time? I bet the answers will surprise you.